And I do want to wrap with really what was kind of a historic day in college sports circles on Monday. And what do I mean by that? Well, the transfer portal over the last 2 or 3 years, it has truly become just a thing in college football, right? In college basketball too. We talk about it a lot in the spring with college basketball. We talked about it a lot last fall with Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler and Quinn Ewers here on the Aaron Torres pod. At the same time, though, there has been some alteration to the transfer portal. And so the new rules state that you can't enter the portal. You can only enter the portal, in 2 very distinct times of the year. Once right after the season and once right after spring practice, or for sports that aren't football, just the spring semester kind of towards the end. And so I bring it up because Monday was a historic day in college football, because for the first time since the summer, the transfer portal reopened. In other words, players could enter their name in the transfer portal. And this is just like a feeding frenzy, okay? The day was crazy. The reports were over 1,000 players entered the transfer portal. I don't know if it's 1,100, 1,400, 1,600, whatever. But basically, picture your favorite college football coach like a bear at the edge of the river in Alaska, just trying to catch salmon jumping out of the water. That was your football coach on Monday, as he's trying to catch a D lineman there, a cornerback there, a safety there, a quarterback there. And so what I want to do is really just kind of go through everything that happened on Monday. And what I suspect is we will be doing quite a few of these updates over the course of the rest of the month, because the portal is open for about a month. Then it closes up. Players have to make their decision by then. I want to get to some of the big news and notes items of the day. Let's get to some of the marquee players who are in the portal. Like I said, 1,400 or so. That numbers, it's over 1,000. We're not going to get to all of them, but probably the biggest name player, the player that everybody is most familiar with, DJ Uiagalelei from Clemson. Okay. By this point, everybody knows DJ's story. Former 5-star quarterback, committed to play at Clemson 3 years ago, was forced into action as a true freshman for Trevor Lawrence when Trevor Lawrence got COVID. Remember those days when he tested positive for COVID, he couldn't play college football. Well, DJ has been the starter the last 2 years, and unfortunately, it just hasn't worked out, okay? Last year, 9 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. It was just a disaster. To his credit, he did get better this year. 22 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. The completion percentage is a little bit higher than it was. And to his credit, there were a couple games that he won for them, most notably the Wake Forest game when he was phenomenal in the second half. But at the end of the day, he just wasn't good enough, especially late in the year. Probably his worst performance as a Clemson Tiger, at least this year, was in that South Carolina game. 8 of 29 passing, 99 yards. They lose the game. They get knocked out of the playoff. He gets benched in the ACC championship game. Cade Klubnik, the freshman, comes in. Dabo says that Cade Klubnik is the starter going forward. And so it appeared to be a matter of if, not when, DJ decided to leave. Well, on Monday, he was one of hundreds who made it official. And now it becomes maybe the most interesting story in the transfer portal, right? Because this kid is a former 5-star. The tools are through the roof, but it just did not click at Clemson. And so the question becomes, was it DJ? Was it the coaching staff? Was it some combination of the two? And if not, if it was Clemson, if it was the coaching staff there, remember they had a new offensive coordinator this year, Tony Elliott, the former offensive coordinator, left to take the head coaching job at Virginia. Well, if it was the coaching staff, the question now becomes, is he salvageable? And more importantly, like, who wants to take a chance on a kid with all these tools and all this upside where it just hasn't clicked for him? Now, in terms of where he could go, I will tell you on Friday, there was a report. He is from Southern California, originally Orange County area, I believe. And the report was that he could end up going out back west to either UCLA or USC. Now, to me, I think USC is probably out of the question, right? They have Caleb Williams coming back next year. Malachi Nelson, a true freshman, is coming in. And so to me, I don't know that it really makes sense to go someplace where there is certainly no path to a starting job next year, but maybe even more importantly, who knows if there's even a starting job after Caleb Williams leaves. UCLA is an interesting one, right? Because I think on one hand, I could see it. Chip Kelly, The offensive guru from a different generation. This team had a ton of success, and this success this year going 9-3. They do need a starting quarterback, and I do think the system kind of fits DJ skills, right? A lot of running, a lot of read option, all that stuff. But at the same time, I could also just see Chip Kelly saying, I have better options. There are better opportunities. I don't want to put all of next year on this kid's shoulders. So if it isn't UCLA, I would say it's probably going to be another West Coast school. Oregon will need a quarterback. Arizona State needs a quarterback with their new head coach, Kenny Dillingham. Those are schools to keep an eye on. And what I would also say with DJ, there is a very interesting twist with him. And this was some of the stuff that came out late last week when it was reported that he would leave Clemson. The report is that this isn't the report part, but he has a younger brother named Mateo, who is a 5-star defensive line prospect in this high school class that is a senior class right now, the class of 2023. And the report is that DJ and Mateo are a package deal. And so if that's the case, that makes things that much more interesting. One, I think it probably eliminates some schools that are recruiting Mateo, because I know Ohio State is deep in on Mateo. I don't think they want DJ. But at the same time, maybe it opens the door for somebody who isn't maybe going to get Mateo to say, you know what, I'll take DJ. I'll take a flyer on him if I can get that 5-star brother of his. So DJ Uiagalelei is the highest profile player. Fascinated to see where he goes. Ironically, while DJ is probably the highest profile player in this class, I think you could probably argue that the best actual quarterback available in the transfer portal, NC State quarterback Devin Leary entered the portal on Monday. This is another one that wasn't really surprising, but this kid is really, really, really good. 4-year starter at NC State last year, a season ago, 2021, threw for 35 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 3,400 yards. And if you remember, there was a lot of buzz coming into this year about NC State potentially being a playoff team. It was because of this kid at quarterback, and it was because of the defense. Now, unfortunately, he got hurt in the middle of the season. NC State goes with another quarterback, and with NC State going with another quarterback, this kid decides to move on and see where he can end up. What I would tell you, upside is through the roof. The stats are there. This was a guy that I think a lot of people thought could leave for the NFL last year, decided to come back for one more year of college this year. And as it turns out, again, he gets hurt, maybe doesn't have the tape that he wants. He decides to leave. Where he ends up, I think, is really interesting. Now, I've heard 2 schools specifically, one I buy, one I don't. I saw Bruce Feldman say that, this was a kid that was recruited to NC State by Eli Drinkwitz. Eli Drinkwitz is now at Missouri. Missouri is, of course, 6-6 and going to a bowl game. I don't really see it. I think this kid is too good, and I think he can be a missing piece for a really good team that is missing a quarterback. Well, there is one that comes to mind, and I'm not claiming I have any inside information on this specific one, but Notre Dame is another school that's linked to him. And Notre Dame is really interesting because Notre Dame, their starting quarterback, a kid named Drew Pine, left their program on Friday of last week. Why that's interesting is for a few reasons. One, he was a starting quarterback. He's from New Canaan, Connecticut. There are reports that he's interested in UConn. Okay, we'll save that conversation for another day. But I bring it up because if Devin Leary goes to Notre Dame, we know what they have at running back. We know what they have at offensive line. The one thing that Notre Dame has really lacked through the years was a super dynamic quarterback. So keep an eye on that one. Devin Leary is now in the portal. We'll see if any movement happens there. One of many ACC quarterbacks, ironically enough, who went into the portal. Keaton Slovis, you may remember him from USC. He was at Pitt last year. He transfers. Boston College's quarterback, Phil Jurkovich, transfers from BC to Pitt on Monday as well. A couple of the big names in the quarterback world. Spencer Sanders, another 4-year starter. He was at Oklahoma State, announces that he will leave. This is one I don't love the game that he has. I love Devin Leary. I love Brennan Armstrong, who left Virginia. Don't know that I love this kid. 4-year starter, sort of accurate, good year. Okay this year, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. A year ago, as Oklahoma State went 11-1 in the regular season, was playing to go to the college football playoff. He's going to end up somewhere good. I'm just saying he's that kind of guy that's going to end up, somebody's going to think that they saved their program by getting him to commit. I don't know if I see that. And some other big names in the portal on Monday. One, to the Arizona Wildcats fans that listen, and we have a lot, believe it or not. Tough day. Dorian Singer. Okay, how about this? The leading wide receiver in the Pac-12, the number one wide receiver in the Pac-12 in terms of yards receiving this year, 1,100 yards receiving, 66 catches, 6 touchdowns, announces that he is going to transfer. Crushing news, devastating news. Now, there were some issues with him and Jayden de Laura, the quarterback. I do get the sense there's probably some NIL stuff going on here. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but you could probably take a guess. When he catch 66 balls and decide to leave, that's not, that's kind of an assumption you can make. Good thing for Arizona. They are deep at wide receiver. Jacob Cowing, who ironically came in through the portal last year, is back. T-Mac, the freshman All-American, who was phenomenal this year, is back. But tough blow for Arizona. Speaking of tough blows, Oregon lost some key players on Monday. Justin Flo, former 5-star linebacker. Now, he's been banged up, but this was one of the top high school players in the class of 2020. Been banged up. He's actually a third-year freshman. Remember, he can redshirt and he gets the COVID year. Third-year freshman, but he's a former 5-star from California. He has decided to leave. And then Dante Thornton, a big play wide receiver originally from the East Coast, he decides to leave as well. Really came on strong late in the season. 2 tough losses for Oregon in the first offseason for Dan Lanning. And by the way, keep in mind, losses are not, the good programs are not immune to losses either. Alabama has had about 8-9 guys enter the portal, as we discussed in the Deion Sanders segment. 2 worth noting late on Monday night. JoJo Earl, wide receiver, 12 catches this year. He's really good. He is going to move on. Tommy Brockmeyer, this one's interesting. Former 5-star, top 10 prospect nationally. So you go through the prospects rankings in the class of 2021, top 10 prospect. He decides to leave. Offensive lineman. He's been banged up, hasn't played there, but man, you talk about a guy that could have had a big impact. I'll say this. I'd love to have a camera on Nick Saban when all this news comes in, because he cannot be happy. Speaking of which, former 5-stars Tony Grimes, cornerback, was originally a member of the class of 2021, commits to North Carolina over Clemson, reclassifies and plays in 2020. A 3-year starter decides to leave Mac Brown's program.